Hello, everyone. Tonight was going to be an electronics project for Workshop Wednesday, but turns out I don't have quite the material I thought I did, so that's not going to happen. Instead, I'm going to do some playing around with some 3D printed objects here. So I've got a few things I've printed that I want to paint up. And we're going to play around with that. So this is an idol of sorts. I want to use some, it's called Rub and Buff. Basically adds a metallic finish to things. So I'm going to play around with that, and then this sort of flame backdrop I'm going to work on. And I actually need to grab some gloves, because this stuff is rather toxic. So we're going to play around with that and see what we get. I also have some other stuff I wanted to paint, which I'm looking around for that stuff. Actually, all that's pretty. Let me look down here. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna paint up this nasty little idol, and I have some other creatures I want to work on. So these fellers here are these sort of winged, sort of demonic style creatures, and I wanted to go ahead and paint them up. So I'll play around a little bit with paint scheme and figure out what I want to do there. But these are these enemies I kind of want to figure out what to do with and give them some color. But let's start off with this. So this is going to be this again sort of demonic idol that I want to work on. I've got a couple of different things here. I think I'm going to start with a base of this pewter Rub and Buff. I'm just going to rub that on, and I'm going to use tissues to start off with. I'm not sure if that's going to be better than, say, paper towels. We'll find out. I'm actually going to try doing a couple of different colors here. So the idea here is that I'll have kind of a base of the pewter, and then I'm going to add maybe on the tops coming down another color. The idea being that it's there's some other metal that was used initially that's worn off over time, over the ages. We're going to start with the pewter, and so just popping off the lid, and then there's a barrier there, so we just use the little puncture thing there to puncture it. Now that's available, and so now I'm going to squirt out some of that onto. Actually, I'm going to do it this way because my right is my dominant hand. Oh, there's some stuff, and then I'm just going to rub that on and rub that into the plastic. And my hope / plan / expectation is that will give it a metallic feel. And yeah, it's looking a little better. Ooh, that is tearing up the tissue. So maybe a paper towel would be better. Just rub more of this on here. So we'll see what happens with the Rub and Buff, whether I can get a good feel for it on the bottom, and then I'll just kind of blend some into the top, or what. I just don't know how that'll all work out. Try to make this something that's reasonably looks reasonably interesting instead of just plasticky. I do like this, but the tissue is kind of falling apart. So I'm going to grab a paper towel. What are we getting in there? So as you can see, we're getting a bit of a metallic finish on the bottom, comparing that to the top, which looks a little bit more like shiny plastic. We're getting more of a shiny pewter feel to the bottom. So I'm glad with that. Let me go grab some paper towels. So we'll start with one paper towel. And I mean, obviously this will also rip up the paper towel to an extent, but I think that's going to be, yeah, it's holding up much better. And I'm just rubbing that in. The downside of the paper towel, of course, is that it doesn't quite get in as easily, I imagine, as the tissue does, because it's not quite as flexible. But I do like this, the overall results here with the pewter. Very chemically smell. So I think I'm just going to go all the way up on that. Wonder what it would look like if I blend two together. I don't think it's going to work very well. So let me tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go most of the way up. Get that buffed in. Okay. Get some more on the... I feel like the legs don't have a lot, so let me add some more to the legs. Really get a bunch on there. Trying not to really goop it on, that doesn't really help much. It's not paint, it's Rub 'n Buff. But that will give us something, I think. So yeah, I'm definitely happy with his overall luster. Okay. Yeah, so that's looking like pewter. That's pretty cool. All right, so that's that. Obviously, I've got a lot of shiny stuff on here. So let me go ahead and move over from the pewter to a different color. So I've got some European gold, some Grecian gold, some autumn gold. Autumn gold sounds right for an old statue. I believe I've already opened. Yeah. And so we'll switch over to a new paper towel. And we will do this. I got turned on to Rub 'n Buff by another YouTuber, Game Methuselah. Whoops. Is that? No. That's a dried. Okay, good. Something's coming out. Getting something. Come on. You were coming out before. Nope. I've got a clear blockage. 1 second. So yeah, Jim Murphy, aka Game Methuselah, he does videos where he talks about DMing and shows how he paints minis and such. Quite the inspiration. And so he did a video on Rub 'n Buff. I wanted to, man, that doesn't want to come out. There must be some other blockage in there. So this is some of the autumn gold Rub 'n Buff. I'm going to get that on here. And as you can see, I'm kind of just rubbing it on and not trying to get it everywhere. I don't know. I'm just kind of playing around with this to kind of get the... That's actually kind of an interesting feel. So I'm just kind of dabbing it on, getting some of the exposed raised edges. That's pretty cool, actually. A little bit on the bottom. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. Okay. So there it is, sort of highlighted in the autumn gold. That's pretty awesome. I got to admit, that looks like an old idol pretty darn neat. There's a little bit of rub and buff. That's neat. I think I'm also going to take some paint and I'm going to fill in the holes for the eyes with black, just to make them nice and, you know, black. Make them look like they're just a void. I think that'll look good. I've got enough rub and buff on there to not do any more of that. Okay, so those are done. That's good. Oh, we still got to do the back thing there. Yeah, so I'm not quite sure on that one. Let me grab another glove. Might go through quite a few gloves tonight. Where's the cap for that? Cap. Where'd the cap? There it is. I may come back to that, but I'm just going to right now, real quick, grab a brush. Is that a good? I need a smaller brush. I got a couple of new brushes today because the old ones I accidentally left out, and they dried up. My mistake. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab some black on here. There we go. Actually, that's a bit much. Wow. Gotta get used to this brush as well. And just paint some black into those holes. Because again, I just want that sense of, man, there are a few, you can see there are a couple little strands that are coming out from the brush, which is very annoying. Like, it's hard to paint well when you've got these extra strands that are going out and getting your paint on places you don't want it to be. But I think I can live with it. Okay, so I'm just getting some paint into those eye sockets. All right, that works. So all that did is just, again, like, made those eye sockets kind of voids. Just adds to the creepiness factor a little bit. And that, I think, is going to be that. So this needs to dry for a little bit, I believe. What do they say on here? Warning, flammable. Avoid ingestion, keep out of reach, first aid. I guess it doesn't have to dry. Wash with cloth, clean with mineral spirits. I'm not going to do it. So I'm just going to leave it like this. Basically, that's our idol. And then I will clean off that brush here in a little bit. Meanwhile, we need to work on this, which I probably should have done that before I finished up the idol, but oh well. So I think kind of similarly, I'm going to do a pewter base coat on this, and then add some highlights in the Grecian gold. Although maybe or the autumn gold. Maybe I'll do another color though. I don't know. I have this ebony rub and buff I kind of want to play around with. Let me try that. Let me do some ebony somewhere. Use some of this paper towel here. Just see what it does. I mean, is it just going to be like black paint? It looks kind of like it. What does that look like? It is kind of interesting. But basically it's just black paint. Okay, so that's not what I'm looking for. Fair enough. Let me grab the pewter and instead throw some pewter on there. I actually kind of like the fact that I have the darker black. Oh, that's actually creating an interesting effect. So I'm essentially merging the black and the gray in. That's cool. So we have a blackish color there. And then let me go ahead and do I have another paper towel here somewhere? There's one, there's two. I had a third sheet. Sitting around here somewhere, I thought. I guess not. I guess I'm using that. It has vanished into the night. Hey, oh, there it is. So let's grab a clean paper towel and use that up here. Yeah, that's kind of cool. So I'm going to kind of work that up. And try to get that all the way in. That's nice. I do like that effect. So you see we have kind of the black on the bottom, working its way up to a more a lighter color near the top. Okay, and the other side. Oh, we got a bit of it on there. Where'd that come from? Okay, let's get some color on here. I wonder if I can sort of scrape off. And again, I don't have any mineral spirits. I wonder if like rubbing alcohol would work. Okay, there's little enough of it that it doesn't really, it's not really visible. I'm gonna rub that in. Oh, there's just a little bit of the 3D printed plastic to get off. Oh yeah, some extra material there to clean up. Thought I had that all removed. Okay, that'll do. So on the back again, I'm just gonna do the straight pewter. I'm not gonna do the. Well, maybe I will. Why not? Let's put some black on the bottom, and then merge it in. So now I see why we have. It comes with black and white. Rub and buff, and now I see why, because we sort of swap between them. We can, or rather we can blend them. We can add one to the bottom there and then blend it to get a bit more all the way up. Oh, and we're getting some of that copper in too, actually. I mean, it's gold that looks copper. It creates an interesting effect. I do think I'm going to come back on this and add some copper highlights as well. I'm not sure what. Not sure exactly what effect I want there. That's an interesting blending there. And that is kind of cool. So we have this idea of flames. So I do like the idea of taking some of the of this metallic color and kind of working it in kind of like it is flames. So let's grab some of that. I should be recapping these so I don't get lost. I think that's right. So I'm going to grab a little bit of the rub and buff. Onto this, and then rub it lightly. Just trying to get highlights, basically. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Oh, a lot of these flames broke off, basically. That's actually okay, because this is meant to be an old idol. And so we're just getting across that idea of, okay, yeah, it's old, all right. Stuff breaks on old things. All right. So there we go with a sort of a brass highlighting feel for behind the idol. So here's what we have as our final idol. That looks pretty darn awesome. I'm very happy with that as our thing. So my player characters will be facing this sooner or later. Yeah, so the rubber buff definitely has a strong feel. It does feel like metal on your objects. That's cool. All right. So there's the thing that is done. I'm going to cap up these. I'm actually going to grab another piece of paper so I can put these to one side. Like I said, they apparently don't really need to dry, but I have found they do benefit from a little time to I don't know, fuse or something. Otherwise, the stuff just rubs right off. Okay, now that's done. We have this little altar, like a blood altar. And I think I want to do a similar thing as I did with that in terms of having, having that metallic feel. However, this blood altar should not, there's no way the rubber buff is going to get in all of those different spots. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually probably going to reuse this this brush. Actually, I have another brush here. I might just use that one. That might be a pretty good brush for this. Yeah. And I'm just going to give this an overall coat of gray. And then once that's dried, probably not tonight, we won't have time, I will come back in. Ooh, this needs a little bit more cleanup. So once it's had a chance to dry, I will come back in and give it some rub and buff. Just as an extra little bit of excitement. So I'm just cleaning off some of the extra bits of plastic on the 3D print. Little wisps of plastic that ended up as a result of the 3D printing process. I'm not too worried about getting every single little feather of plastic off, but a little extra effort definitely makes for a better looking object, better looking print, better looking things. My players will be dealing with devils and demons and such, and so I've been 3D printing just sort of more or less random abyssal things as being one of them. I saw this altar and I was like, oh, that'll look great in a some kind of abyssal layer. Has these sort of random symbols carved on it. On either end has all of these pockmarks in the top to presumably to gather blood. Oh, and that's actually kind of breaking off, so we need to fix that. But before that, I can go ahead and paint it. So I'm just gonna grab a bunch of paint, and get that all in all the crevices. So this is slathering paint as deeply as I can. I'm now immediately seeing a problem, namely that these there's a very small gap between these. So that's always going to be visible. I may need to reprint this in black because I don't think I can actually get this to a decent coat of paint. Right, it's going to be, I think, black in the back. So yeah, that's not going to work. Okay, so I've now realized that. So I don't know if you can see, but in between those slats you can see the white of the plastic. And I can't really get the brush that far in there. I don't have a brush that's small enough to get all the way in to all of those little spaces. Although actually, now that I'm trying, now there are still little spots where it's just not going in. I mean, maybe that's okay. Maybe there's a little, and maybe, I mean, you could always argue that there's some strange light in there. You know what? I'm going to continue painting, and we'll see what it looks like. We'll see how bad it is, so to speak. Wow, that's a lot of paint. Okay. Yeah, I think we can salvage this. We can give it enough of a paint job. And one nice thing about hellish landscapes is that the stuff in them can look strange, and that's okay. You know, I can have some strange bulbous areas, in other words, places that didn't print very well, and that's just all part of the aesthetic. It's just a weird side effect of being in hell. Hey, Dropkicks. Presumably to gather blood, yes, as well as seals. How you doing, Dropkicks? It's a nice Wednesday. Yeah, I was raised in an environment where people definitely were not thrilled at the idea of having adventures in hell. But as I've grown older, I've come very much to peace with the idea of exploring that in a fantasy environment. My family would have been very uncomfortable with that, as would have I as a kid, to be fair. This would have seemed very suspect to me as a kid. I was a very upright, standard kind of kid. You know, I did not like to get into stuff like this, stuff that was even vaguely occultish. But I'm rather more laid back about that now. Not that there's not weird stuff out there. Obviously, there are people and organizations that you do not want to get involved with. But I'm pretty sure that Dungeons and Dragons is not one of those things. I've done enough time with these things. The idea of sending a paladin down through the 9 hells is something that I'm fine with doing on a Saturday night. So yeah, we'll get some nice. That's actually that coverage is pretty good. You know, you'll be able to see a few little dots in there, and always like I often say, you know, it's not like at the table people are going to be looking at up underneath the sides of these objects that you have. You know, they're meant for play. They're meant they're meant as props basically. And if you don't have every single detail right, well, that's okay for your friends, for your group. We're just playing around. For having, you know, up on a display mantelpiece somewhere. That's all right. And also as a stepping stone, as a, you know, well, this isn't perfect, but it was what I did on this day. And I learned from it. So yeah, definitely next time if I do this, I would not print it in white. I would print it in like a black or a gray. So I would not have to be going back over it like this. Lesson learned. Okay. We'll get that. We'll get that. There we are. Okay, that's a decent coverage. Yeah. It's always worth exploring things critically. And I do think people do change a fair amount compared to what they were like when they were younger. Although that could just be the folks I'm familiar with and I kind of hang out with. But most of the folks I know, you know, aren't what they were like when they were 12, in fairness. Okay. But yeah, it's important to reevaluate, to ask yourself what's truly important. All right. So, get in some of these spikes, get down in there. All right. So there is our painted altar. in a simple flat gray. It's actually I think there's a bit of it's a satin gray. It's a little bit of a shine to it. So that'll dry up. And like I said, I think, it won't be dry tonight. It'll take a few hours to get there, but that gets that started. So now I have to get rid of these. Unfortunately, I'm turning through a lot of gloves tonight. Sometimes it's a night of many gloves. So like I said, I got these fellers. And I need to, real quick, look that up. And see what its official color scheme is. Again, not that I will follow it precisely, but it's nice to have a reference. To say, oh, it's blue, or it's green. I can start there. All right, so there's those, there's those, there's those, there's those, there's those, and there's those. So it's none of those. So it's probably in the main set. Arcanoloths, not Mezzoloths. There they are, Nicoloths. So these guys are green, as it turns out, with kind of orange highlights. So the inside of their wings are an orangey, browny color with green along the spines, it looks like. Interesting. So let's do that. So I need a green. Now, the only green I have is this very bright green, which is too green. So I need to fix that. Where's my little bowl? Oh, I don't have a little bowl. That's right. I was saving it, which I probably shouldn't save it anymore. So here's my, here's the paint from the other day. That's actually still wet, isn't it? Wow, it's still wet. That's awesome. Okay, cool. I'm not going to annihilate that then. I'm going to grab another bowl, actually. Okay, I have a few of these glass bowls, and I was using them for food stuff, but I realize I do much more painting now. And then we need the sticks. So I want a more dusky green. Do a little bit of cleanup here. So there's the. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to move the whites out of here, and the gold out of here. So I'm going to put all the golds in one bag, and all the other colors, the white, gray, and black, in the other bag. Okay. So then those will get processed away. But now let's move on to our painting. Okay, so let's start with some green. I'm gonna need a fair amount of green to cover these guys. I'm actually impressed that I still have power and internet because we had a big old storm come through here. Gonna mix that up a little bit while I'm down there. It's gotten a little separated. You gotta keep them separated. Alright, so we'll add those together. I'm just gonna mix that. To get a nice dusky green. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that's gonna be our base creature skin color. A little more gray in there, actually. Let's mix that in. Yeah, it's actually even nicer. A little simpler. Okay, good. So I'm going to use. I think I might as well go ahead and use a larger brush on this one because I have a lot of surface area to cover. Do I reflect my old review style? I do. I appreciate that, Dropkicks. Yeah, I think about that quite a bit, actually. I like that old style. The problem is it's impossible for me to do that long term every week. You know, I used to be able to do that back in the day, but I can't now. But I would like to. So I've definitely been thinking about ways of going back and doing that and doing that old process. It's one of the reasons I'm doing Geek Archaeology in this sort of format, so I have other weekly things, and then the anime reviews can be more or less frequent, but more in depth. I'm actually working on. I've been writing a new series where I talk about a piece of media and what I'd change about it to make it better for me, which I think is an interesting topic. Because it doesn't necessarily go in depth on every single aspect of a thing, but it is at least saying, this didn't work, and not just here's why, but here's what I think would be a better way of doing it. Imagine this movie instead. And the paper is moving everywhere. One of the reasons I have the paper is to catch drips. And I need to make sure it actually catches the drips. So that's a thing I think about a lot. We'll see. I also don't watch as much anime now as I used to. So I'm not, getting through a new show every week or so. So yeah, I like the way I did it back before. That's part of the whole self-reflection thing. Is sometimes you realize, oh, I've kind of gone off track a little bit due to various constraints, and so I need to find a way of marrying the old way and the new way. Well, the new circumstances and the old way, so to speak. Because everything changes all the time. So at this point, I'm just getting green all over his body. This nice dusky green. And then I'll have a different color, obviously, for the loincloth. And I might try to find a very different brown for that, because I tend to just reuse the two brown colors that I have whenever I've got leather on somebody. I think it'd be nice to make sort of maybe a more orangey brown for that. We'll see. Yeah, and I still believe that. I still believe that anime is, as much worthy of analysis as a Rembrandt painting. The vast majority of anime are not as deep or complex as a Rembrandt painting, but it's all art, and it all deserves respect. But yeah. Yep. I would definitely like to do that. Go back to that. The other problem, too, is I've kind of reached a point in my life where I'm not as, I don't know, I would say I'm not as excited about anime as I used to be. Not that I hate it, but it's that I'm not as super duper serious passionate about it as I used to be. I don't have that bee in my bonnet that I had back in the day. I still love it. It still gives me thrills. But my my take on the medium has changed, right? My feelings are a little different. Because I'm a little older, and it's just not that big of a deal. And I'll be honest also, I did those deeper reviews, and I didn't seem to get much reaction. Like, I didn't see people, responding and emailing me and going deep on those things. I felt like I was kind of a voice crying in the wilderness, alone, and it didn't seem to have much of an impact. Obviously, people showed up, and I got fans, and I'm very appreciative of that. People liked the reviews, but it wasn't spawning a deeper review style, it seemed. I wasn't able to find those conversations with people. And that was dispiriting. And perhaps I just wasn't looking hard enough. But it is hard when you're kind of doing this one thing over and over for months and then years, and it just doesn't seem to be helping. So, that's not an excuse. It's not. That doesn't mean I should be making more shallow reviews, but that does factor into it, right? Kind of inevitably. Gotta get all of that. Oops, went a little bit over, but that's okay. I'll be coming back and doing the bangles. Okay, and then how did that work? So we had, can you get behind the ears, get the shoulder. So the image showed that the paint came up. Let me see here. So it's a different design. So definitely this part is green. So I think what I'll do is just paint up here. And definitely go overboard with the green. Then I'll come back with the orange and potentially change that up significantly. Perhaps just the inside of them, and then the back is green. So I think I'll do the whole backs of the wings in this green. And we'll come back and get it a nice, consistent or internal color on the insides of the wings. So yeah, the other problem too is I've reviewed a lot of stuff. I've gone through a lot of things to review. So I don't have a huge desire to go and make a bunch more reviews. It's kind of like, well, I did that thing. I spent so much time doing reviews. I don't really feel a huge, strong desire to. I don't want to necessarily make reviews every week for the rest of my life. Like, folks have my review of a lot of different things. Do they really need my review of My Hero Academia? I don't know. It's also hard doing it alone. When it's just me and I could be doing other things. That's also actually an important thing, is that I have more hobbies now. I have more things that interest me. So I'm not, I don't have as much time to fill, so to speak, as back when I was doing all those reviews. I could, come home and spend all evening Tuesday working on videos, and then Wednesday and Thursday and so forth, and not so much anymore. So, yep, gotta think about that. Okay, so there's one of them, and now we will do same kind of thing on his brother. And as usual, because he has a gray base, that should slightly color the green. The green isn't going to completely cover every millimeter thickly. So some of that gray will taint the green, if you will. So we have a slightly different color scheme to them, which is good. I don't want all my minis to be identical. I want them to each have a little bit of character. Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's weird. I would kind of like to still be that guy who comes home and just watches anime all evening, every evening. Not every single evening, but that was a lot of my evenings, and so I would just churn through, half a show an evening, and get through all sorts of material. That was fun, but I'm not that guy anymore, and so I don't have as much to say about all those shows. But yeah, if I was still working with Evan or some of the other guys, then that would definitely be that would help a lot, because if I have somebody else to set up cameras, to bounce ideas off of, talk over things with, then it becomes much easier to make videos, just less time consuming. Unfortunately, Evan's life got busy right around the time that we were kind of getting everything settled to be able to do that. And so he's not around as much to do stuff. So that kind of fell apart. And I have other friends, but they're busy too. So that has been an issue. An unfortunate side effect of life. Sometimes I wonder what would happen. Oh, it's stuck. If I just kind of ignored everything else and just said, okay, over the next month, I'm going to do a review of One Punch Man. And I'm going to really dig into it, and I'm going to watch it, and I'm going to do an old school, and I'm going to do like a 20-minute review of this, going into everything. Wonder what that would be like. That would be worthwhile. I don't know. I mean, obviously some folks would love it. Who knows? But like us all watching One Punch Man together actually turned out to be a really effective way for me to gather my thoughts on things. So I have a script right now for what for actually not for One Punch Man, but for Princess Arite, for Inside, and I've been thinking about kind of formulating what I would say about One Punch Man as a more formal review. That definitely helps. But yeah. And unfortunately, this means I cannot become a major YouTube personality. In that sense, excuse me, I'm passing some gas over here. Because I can't be consistent in that way. I'm just not that guy who is always doing the same thing year over year. I'm not the Nostalgia Critic. And of course, I mean, he gets paid quite well to be the Nostalgia Critic. Good for him. But that's just not going to be able to be me. Let's see. And I am very comfortable with the fact that I will likely be one of those people that produces a bunch of content and then, eventually goes away. Everyone's like, oh, what happened to that guy? And they go and they find all this material and like, oh my gosh, he was making all this stuff. It's like, yep. I built a library, and at some point I stopped building that library. That library of material. You know, I may well be the kind of person who is better remembered after I'm gone, and I don't necessarily mean, you know, dead, but when I've moved on to other things. It happens. All right, let me grab it from here. Get the rest of this wing painted up. How are we doing on that? Well, that's already tacky. The blood altar. That's an interesting point. Good point, Dropkicks. The other flaw I have is that I have never plugged into the YouTube community. I've always been on my own, and that is something, you know, sometimes with people on camera, but I have not plugged in with other YouTubers, and that's my fault. I have just never pursued that, and that would certainly help me a huge amount. I should do that, and I just have not. And again, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, so I have to do these analytical videos on a regular schedule and, you know, not get fired from my job and collaborate on videos with other YouTubers. Like, who has the time? So that's just been me being, I wouldn't say lazy, but not wanting to do the work. So yeah, that's definitely something for me to get better at. So we shall see. Yeah, there's one. So yeah, there are two things I need to change. It is being more. Well, I want to be more consistent with my videos, but that's coming. This really wants to fall over. Make sure I'm not. Yeah, there are a few little spots I didn't get. But yeah, it would be to contact more YouTubers and to make deeper reviews, more analytical reviews. I mean, part of the reason I was doing it this way, the more shallow way, was because I figured that would catch the YouTube audience better. People didn't want deeper reviews. They wanted something snappy and fast. But that does not seem to be the truth, oddly enough. Yeah, no, I agree. Those analytics. Okay, all right, fine. We're gonna have to do it that way. You're just gonna have to fall over. Yeah, I need to connect up with those deeper critics. One of these days, somehow. I would certainly love to do a series on Lane, where we talk about all the different aspects of it. You know, we each take some element of the show and dive deep on religion or technology or what have you. Okay, so that is a pretty decent green coat on these guys. Back of the wings, body, legs. So basically, you know, quote unquote, all I need at this point, once this is dried, is the inside of the wings, the loincloth, and these metal bands. I'll also dot in eyes on them, I'm sure. But this gets us pretty darn close to there. So that's good. The altar, as I said, it's actually, yeah, it's still tacky. It's not ready to buff. If I buffed it, I'd just be pulling paint off, unfortunately. So that's those. I have some other monsters, but I haven't really kind of uncorked them yet. Well, they have a whole bunch of support material on them. So this is I have these, which are basically the Garthim from The Dark Crystal, if you remember that movie. So the weird sort of insectoid creatures. I have 3D prints of those that I'm going to use for monsters, and I have a few more here that I have not removed from the support material. So I need to do that, but I just do not feel like spending the 15 minutes that you'd require to pull out all that stuff to paint them. So, nope. I do have some tree trunks. Actually, what I can do that. All right. Let me grab some stuff here. I can give them some base coats. So I've got these little like braziers that I want to coat in at least like a gray. So I'll do that. And then these tree trunks that I will also coat in some kind of a color. So that's just going to be straight up gray. And I already have the gray on this brush. So that's convenient. How many years of my free time do you think was fully devoted to anime like in those early YouTube days? Oh gosh. Several, definitely. So I'm assuming you mean, how much time, like for how many months was I more or less spending all my free time watching anime, making videos, that kind of stuff, and not doing other hobbies in much detail. And I would say, yeah, probably 3 or 4 years of that. And obviously I had other hobbies. I was doing other stuff. I was cooking and gardening and such. But anime was definitely the big thing. Okay, so I've got these, like I said, these braziers. I'm just going to slap some gray on. And then some other day I'll come back and add some black highlights or something. But this just gives it, something awfully weird to come across a white brazier. But a nice gray stone brazier makes a lot more sense. And I'm not going to paint in the fire, because the fire should not be gray. But I can get gray all around the fire, little spots in there. And then, of course, there were also years before I did a YouTube channel that I was watching anime, all the time during my free times. There was probably, about 10 years. Well, maybe not that long. Probably 5-7 years before I started the YouTube channel, where I was watching anime, all the time. Where that was how I spent my free time, more or less. And it all adds up. I actually just found out that one of the students in one of my classes is going to see the My Hero Academia movie tonight. Like he's an anime fan. Like that's definitely an anime fan if you're going to see an anime movie in theaters. But yeah. And there's also the problem that I am more of a fan of the older stuff. So I don't get as excited by modern anime. I like a lot of the stuff out there, but it's just I'm not into the zeitgeist. Which doesn't help. Nobody cares about Lane anymore. It sucks. What are the top 3 years of anime you tend to think about even now? Ones that really stand out in your mind as being impactful? Gosh, it's tough. There are so many. Lane, certainly. Lane changed my life. Rurouni Kenshin OVA. Because of just how much it... I had never seen something that so clearly and so cleanly criticized the act of being violent and showed the impact of being violence on your personality, on your soul. How being personally violent corrupts you. and not in a, turns you into a megalomaniacal, evil Hans Gruber kind of person, but that it changes you. You think about people differently when you're a violent person. I just never thought about that before. I just really hadn't. Okay. So, funny thing about trees, they're not brown. They are gray. If you look outside at a tree trunk, you will see that it is gray, not brown. But we think it's brown because when you polish wood, it has a brown quality to it. So I'm going to take some gray, I'm going to mix some brown into it. A little more brown than that, I think. Okay. And I'm going to grab another brush, and I'm going to paint these tree trunks with a brownish gray. Actually, it's gray with a little bit of brown added in. So definitely Kenshin, Lane, and Lane not just because it was dark, but because it was a wake-up call about the internet and how much time I was spending on computers and such, and making me realize that these things are not in and of themselves bad, but you can go too far with them, and that I had been doing that, and I still struggle with that today, very much so. But Lane was the wake-up call. Also impactful for me, Tenchi Muyo, partly because it was such a different kind of story. It had these characters with these weird powers and just would throw weird powers at you and didn't try to explain its entire universe to you. It said, my universe is much bigger than this show, so I can't explain all of it. Instead, you're just going to get people with weird powers, and that's just the reality. I really like that. But also shows like Boogie Pop Phantom, which were all about how one's philosophy can be wrong. That there are ways of looking at life that are just wrong and bad and unhelpful. And that just struck me as a very mature way of seeing the world. So that was pretty interesting. A little more of this color. Mix that in. This one's going to be a little browner than the other one, I think, when all is said and done. What else has been particularly impactful on me? A lot of weird little things. There's when I think back on anime, I think back on like Ghost in the Shell, where my opinion of that has changed over time. So it feels like every few years I've had a different set of thoughts on Ghost in the Shell, the first movie. So that's been with me just because I've had to re-examine it so often. And stuff like Dominion Tank Police, which blew me away for being this fun, silly comedy, and then suddenly very much not a fun, silly comedy, and suddenly being very serious and being, about all sorts of different things and touching on many different aspects of, man's inhumanity to man, and crime, and what makes someone, lawful or unlawful. Why do people pursue the things they pursue? It was just really amazing what it managed to touch on in this goofy little comedy. So one of the things I'm doing here is I'm going back and I'm using some of this other color to fill in spots on the first mini, the first little thing that I may have missed, and that will actually give it a little extra character. Because So they'll have a slightly different color on those spots as a result of just dabbing in. So that can be one way of helping out your color scheme. So yeah, I'd say those are a couple of the big ones. Oh, you're absolutely welcome. I'm always glad to talk about this stuff whenever I can. But yeah, those stick out. But also like Project A-ko, which was this kind of like Tank Police. It was a comedy, and this huge comedy. It didn't get particularly serious, but the fact that it could parody everything, it could parody action movies and animation and sci-fi and all this stuff all at once with great gusto. I just really respected, and the idea that there were people out there making fun of science fiction. Like, that was pretty remarkable back in the day. That you could make a big science fiction thing that also made fun of science fiction, but in a loving way. Where it's like, we're gonna be awesome, and while we're making fun of things. Yeah, those definitely stuck. Looking over at the wall of manga. Gundam was a big one. I think Gundam was big because that was the anime franchise I got deep into. That was where I was like, I want to go deep on this whole thing, and also from a philosophical perspective. Like, I want to understand what this franchise believes and what it's getting across. That original, Gundam Wing was just so all over the place. Let's be honest. But it did a lot of things all at once, and then going back to original Gundam and just seeing how much it accomplished made me really want to dig into that. And actually, getting back to these guys have axes, and I'm actually going to use that same gray, I think, for the just for the axe. Actually, no. What I'm going to do, I'm going to grab some of this brown, mix a bit more brown in there. Yeah, I'll have to use another thing. And we'll just have kind of a gray-brown for the handles on that. Yeah, that's a nice kind of off brown. Yeah. So I'll just grab that by the axe head. And just do that. Oops. Pull off some of that plastic. I see I got some green on me. That happens. There's my... There we go. And my party might not end up facing one of these guys soon. And then I'll come back and put some... probably buff some of the pewter. Or no, I have some like sterling silver paint that I'll probably use on the axe head. Maybe I'll paint it with the silver and then buff in some pewter. That might look interesting. Yeah, one of the things that's always impressed me about anime is how much it often does in any given work. That it can be funny and dramatic, and it can have character development, and it can have sci-fi, and it can do all these things all at once, and it doesn't feel forced. Like, it all comes together. And of course, part of that is the medium. With animation, you can do a lot. It's one of the reasons why Tenchi in Tokyo remains one of my personal favorite little things. Not because I like the entire show, but because every so often that show would just destroy you. Or me at least. It was this really extraordinarily broad comedy, this very dumb comedy for episode after episode, and then you'd have one brief scene where suddenly you realized who the villain actually was. Not in terms of identity, but in terms of what is going on with the villain, and you're like, oh my gosh, I get it. Or you'd have a scene with a side character, and suddenly it would just be, you'd start to bawl. And then they gave us one of the great endings with the ending of Tenchi in Tokyo. Like that is a Tenchi ending in a way that many Tenchi stories are not. Like they managed to sum up his character and what that show tries to be at the end of Tenchi in Tokyo. This show that is 99% dumb comedy. So it's stuff like that really stuck with me. That these people were clearly really trying hard with their shows. Even going back to shows like Voltron. Voltron, as formulaic as it was, clearly aimed at a young audience. It blended science fiction and fantasy, and had some really cleverly written moments, some neat lines in there, and it just felt big. It felt imaginative. I guess it's one of the reasons I've always liked anime. It's always been a very imaginative medium, in a way that the mediums I'm used to over here generally are not. TV in America is not very imaginative. Hollywood movies are generally not very imaginative. But anime is. And even today, every season a show comes along and I'm like, I could not have imagined that they would tackle this with anime. And they do, sure enough. So it's definitely an interesting medium. All right, those are painted up. Those are done. Oh, you know what I will go ahead and do? Yeah. Well, maybe I don't. Is that? Oh, you know what? Yeah. So this is a little thing that you put a tea light underneath, and so it goes up in there and sort of flickers with the everything else on it. So I'm going to go ahead and paint up the logs with that brown paint before I forget. The odd question: if you were to leave one anime after your death to your children or whomever as a piece of art that really connects to you, and them watching it would help them understand you and connect to you, what would that be? Serial Experiments Lain. It just would. That is a show that speaks to how I believe people should treat each other, how I believe we should respect other people, but not in a simple way, not just that is everybody is equal, thus everybody is the same, so treat everyone the same. No, you do not treat everybody the same. People are different, but people are complex. People are far more than they seem to be. So do not do them the disrespect of assuming that they're all idiots. Give people a chance. It's also about the powers and dangers of technology. It's about what our responsibilities are. And again, without getting into extremes, without getting into, because you have used the internet, you are now responsible for what is being done on the internet. No, come on. It doesn't take that whole responsibility thing too far. And it's also about being in a particular place and sometimes having to do things that are very painful as a result of that. Lain has to more or less commit suicide and live in complete isolation to save her friend and to clean up the mess she makes. And so she does that. And she still continues to exist, but no one knows she exists, so it's as though she doesn't exist. It's that whole theme. If no one remembers a thing, did it really happen? And, I have often been a lonely person. I have often been a solitary person. Even when I'm with a group, even when I'm helping with things, I'm often the oddball. I'm often the one off to the side that people think differently about. And I've had to come to grips with the fact that I am that person. I'm never going to be just one of the guys. And I've had to, at times, exercise my power in ways that hurt. In the 90s, I was a member of a chat room called events.sci-fi.com. It was a chat room created by the Sci-Fi Channel for some of their live events, and they just kept it running 24 hours a day. And so I and other fans would hang out there for a lot of time. And it was actually not long after that I was watching Lane. And at one point, one of the admins really mistreated one of the people in the chat room. And I kind of freaked out. And I was like, well, you know what? I don't trust the people here. I don't trust the administration here. I don't think it's a safe place anymore. And so I have to leave. And I left. And everyone else left too, as it turned out. But I lost most of my friends. They were gone because I wasn't connecting to their chat room anymore. And it wasn't that they disliked me anymore. It was that I just wasn't around to talk to. And as I said, it turned out that was kind of the trigger for an implosion of the other people, and most of the folks left. But I lost a lot of friends, and to this day I don't regret my decision, but it's something I felt I had to do. And it turned out I didn't know this at the time, it turned out I was kind of an influential person on there. I'd just been around a long time, and so people paid attention, and it sucked, and it still sucks in a lot of ways. But that is sometimes something you have to do. And so I love that Lane addresses that full on and is uncompromising about it. That it sucks. It is very painful. And it's not a happy ending. But you move on. Okay, so those are those logs all painted up in a slightly brown color. The stone, I want to keep stone, obviously. I'm actually going to go ahead and paint brown in around them, just to give it an extra little sense of color. Obviously, it wouldn't be brown all in here, but that will just give it something a little more natural than just gray in there. And obviously, I don't want to make it sound like my leaving a chat room was this incredible, brave decision, right? It was just a guy leaving a chat room. There are far braver acts in the world than that. No Nazis were involved. But, yeah. All right, so yeah, I've just added some brown in around there, so that just gives it a little, like I said, it just kind of finishes off that inside ring, and I'd probably go back in and add a little more detail, brush in some black around there. It'd probably look better if it was black. And there we go on that. I might come in later on and do a wet wash on here, so wash out some black and push that into these stones just to highlight them a little bit. That'll be a good thing to do, but I'm not going to do that right now because I want to wait for this to dry, because otherwise I'll be doing that and accidentally touching the wood, Got to be careful accidentally touching wood. So yeah, so that is done there. And I think, yeah, did I pull anything else up? I don't feel like I did. Cool. All right, I think that'll do it for tonight. Thanks for the questions, Dropkicks. Ow. So we made some good progress on all these things. Obviously, again, it needs more time to dry. They all need more time to dry. So maybe another week we'll come back and finish things out. Thanks, Dropkicks. I enjoyed it too. So that'll do it for tonight. So this Saturday we will be doing another anime watching stream, and then video games Sunday, and continuing on. So thank you all very much. Have a good week. Until next time, make something.